Hello everyone, and welcome to Fableheim. Today, we are beginning my MISTOVER class deep dive for all of the classes available in MISTOVER. Sorry it's a little bit late, but you know what they say, better late than never. We are beginning with perhaps the simplest of classes to understand, the Sister. Now for those of you who don't want to go through every ability that she possesses and my potential thoughts and theory crafting with her, here is the Tldr. The Sister is the only class in the game without a strictly offensive ability. Sweet Foe's a stun, so it doesn't really count. She is your traditional healer and all-around defensive spellcaster with a touch of masochism. And that's it. For those of you who are interested in seeing all of her abilities and my thoughts, and some combat show-off, there's not much for her, let's begin. Now the first of her abilities is called Punishment. It's your standard, here's an attack that doesn't cost any mana and you can use whenever you feel like. It's just 110% of her weapon damage on a single target that can be used from the first or second column, on any enemy column. Pretty straightforward. Her second ability is called Love, and it recovers the HP of one party member by 200% of your attack. Now this is very similar to her next ability, Suspicious Love, which recovers the HP of one party member by 266% of your attack. But the main difference between these two abilities is that Love can be used from the second or third column, and Suspicious Love is used from the first or second column. So if you want your sister to be in the final column protected way in the back, then you want to bring Love. If you don't mind her being upfront and personal, which she'd probably prefer, then you can bring Suspicious Love. It's really preference. One of the abilities that I don't have unlocked, unfortunately, is his Protection. This protects one party member from a shield that blocks damage from one attack. So, if you can foresee an enemy's attack coming probably later on, because that's not really happening in the forest, like a huge charge attack, then you can use this to mitigate the damage of it. Please know that it only blocks one attack, so just the next attack, and this could end poorly for attacks that do a multitude of attacks in one. So just keep that in mind. And of course this can be used from the second or third columns. Now the ability that I mentioned in the Tldr is called Sweet Foe. This is an offensive ability that deals damage equal to 80% of your attack on one enemy and has an 80% chance of causing stun. You'll notice a trend as we're going throughout all the abilities that abilities that are meant to stun opponents don't do a whole lot of damage. So you're usually bringing it for the utility and not so much the damage. This can be used from the second or third column on any enemy column, so it's good for reaching those annoying casters way in the back. Personally, I wouldn't go without it. The next ability is called Overflowing Love, probably her most powerful and impactful ability. This recovers the HP of all party members by 88% of your attack. It is 80% at level 1, but I have the level 2 version. This can be used either from the second or third column and affects all ally columns. All ally squares. Personally, if you're bringing the sister to be a healer, I think this is almost mandatory. There are a lot of instances where enemies will do AoE attacks of some form, and you can actually use this to kind of cheese the food mechanic. So if you are out of food and taking damage with every step, you can engage an enemy, guard with everyone else, and then use Overflowing Love to mitigate or even overcome the damage that you've taken from food. I've done it before, it's an interesting thought, but that just means you weren't really prepared. The next ability is Prayer of Love. This recovers the HP of party members in a single column by 100% of your attack. This can be used from the first or second column, and again affects everyone in a column going down. This is an interesting thought. It's basically an Overflowing Love that doesn't affect everyone and is slightly stronger. I don't know how useful this is. The next ability that I also don't have unlocked is called Masochistic Pleasure, probably her favorite ability. This gives party members in one column a shield that recovers damage with 25% of your MP. Give your party members in one column a debuff that increases the chance of being attacked by 62%. That's not percentage. But anyway, this just means 25% of the damage you receive is converted to mana. Can be very useful if you are spending mana like crazy. So, could be good. This could be used from the first or second slots and any rows going down for your allies. Now her next ability is probably her most useful ability. I would highly recommend bringing this either with her or its equivalent with the Onmyoji. This is Stable Cloud. It can be used from the second or third column on any friendly ally, and it removes the bleeding mesmerize from one party member excluding yourself. Bleeds can be devastating, especially because they're able to stack. So having this with you is always a good idea. Now, of course, this means if you're targeted by the bleed, you can't remove it yourself. Usually you'll either have corrupted bandages or even bandages if you know you're dealing with a lot of bleeds. So I don't think that's too big of a deal. Now, her last ability is one that I have mixed feelings on. It is Last Prayer, and it gives party members a shield that prevents their HP from falling below 1 when damage is taken. It can be used from the second or third row, and it can be used on any friendly square. This, of course, is very useful if you're fighting, say, a boss or an opponent that you know is going to be dealing devastating damage to someone, which isn't uncommon in dungeon crawlers. But I think people are going to find the best use out of this by comboing it with the Werewolf. Now, I know the Werewolf isn't available for play, but I was doing some research on what they could do, and one of their aggressive abilities is to deal X amount of damage, and they deal up to X amount of damage based on their missing health. So you can imagine a Werewolf that's at 1 HP thanks to this, just going crazy on people. And I think that could be a lot of fun. But, of course, we'll have to wait and see. Now, the sister's first cooperative ability is called Love Reversal. This is an attack on all enemies that inflicts damage equal to 60% of your attack on all enemies, and continuous damage equal to 40% of your attack. 80% chance of that happening requires a witch behind you. This can be used in any column and will attack all enemies, as I've now said 3 times. This is an interesting cooperative ability, especially for a sister to have, because this does give her a damaging option, and I think this could be a lot of fun in a bleed build, which I'm going to be talking about a little bit later. So this gives me great ideas. I enjoy this one. I've actually never used it, so looking forward to testing it out. Her next cooperative ability is called Holy Spear. As you can see, this is one of them that I don't have unlocked. I believe you unlock these randomly whenever you reach the appropriate level, so it just is kind of happenstance that I don't have it. This inflicts damage equal to 112% of your attack on all enemies, and a 25% defense decrease debuff. 80% chance requires a paladin in front of you. Once again, this can be used from all 3 columns, and it will affect all enemy squares. This is actually her most damaging ability, so that's interesting, a thought to keep in mind. And a defense decrease across all enemies is very useful. Keep in mind that defense and resistances, for example, are not separate. So this is increased melee damage and increased spell damage. So this could be very useful if you're fighting a lot of enemies or a lot of durable enemies to try and hack away at them a little bit more effectively. I like it. The only part of this that might be a little complicated is having a paladin in front of you. This usually relegates you to the middle column, and as we've talked about, a few abilities could very easily be thrown off course if you were moved either forward or backwards. So that's a thought to keep in mind. Now, her final cooperative ability is called Seal Breaker. This inflicts damage equal to 60% of your attack on all enemies, 80% chance of causing stun, requires a Shadow Blade in front of you. This can be used from all 3 columns and will affect all enemy squares. I actually have a short video on the channel about this ability because I'm afraid it could trigger an epileptic fit due to its photosensitivity light flashing, because it flashes pretty quickly between red and white. So that's a possible concern with this ability. I know that when I do my playthrough, I won't be using it at all, just on the off chance that it has negative repercussions, but it is a great ability. So if you don't have photosensitivity, either for migraine or epilepsy triggers, and you're playing along, feel free to use it, because stunning everything can be so powerful. And I know that if I could, I would use it a lot. The last thing to really mention about her abilities is that her Expedition ability, which costs 16 food, is while moving during exploration, healing power is increased by 200%. This makes it so your food recovers more health quicker. Not bad, but not horribly useful either. And when it comes to jinxes, I don't really know exactly what to say, other than anything that increases the damage she receives is obviously not good. Anything that improves her healing, probably good. Well, I suppose attack, because that's how it translates into healing. and I don't think she has any unique or specific jinxes like the witch, and like potentially, I imagine, the werewolf. And welcome to this poorly transitioned combat portion of the video. As I stated previously, there isn't a whole lot to show with the sister and combat because she doesn't do a whole lot of combat. However, I had a lot of fun testing out my bleed build, and I would like to show that off. Before I get too far into it, I want to talk about my formation. The most important part of this formation is that the sister is in front of the witch to activate their cooperative ability. The tricky part that I had figuring out was making sure that one of my shadow blades, the one with the bomb toss, and my Onmyoji were both in the proper columns to be able to use those abilities, but as long as that was the case, then everything else worked smoothly. Now when it comes to the bleed builds with the sister, her biggest contribution is, well, her only contribution is Love Reversal, the cooperative ability between her and the witch. This surprised me a little bit. It wasn't overwhelming damage like the bleed effects from my Shadow Blade and from my witch, but it was enough to push some enemies over the edge. When I had it stacked with others, it quickly became unmanageable for them. So overall, I would say the bleed build is a success. There's just only one downside, and that is the bleed damage in this game ticks at the end of their turn and not at the start of it, which means they'll get to do one last action before they bleed to death. That of course means you're potentially going to take more damage than if you just exploded them with either insane single target damage from the Shadow Blade or another build that focuses on just running over monsters. But I could see this being incredibly useful against like a boss or mobs with a lot of health. Remember, right now we are severely overleveled for this zone because we only have access to the first two zones in the demo. Now I did use her healing abilities once or twice. I used, I believe, Suspicious Love once and Overwhelming Love once as well. There's not a whole lot to say about it other than they're good. They've always been good. And they will probably continue to always be good. So now I only more firmly believe in my original assumption. I think that the sister is going to be incredibly useful when you're breaking into a new area, but once you have that area on farm as it were, or unless you're about to be facing a boss, I think she can probably be cut. Unless of course you're trying for this total bleed build, which I do recommend if you want to have fun. And that was our deep dive of the sister. I hope that you enjoyed. If you did, and if you want to see more, make sure that you subscribe and hit that stupid bell so YouTube knows to notify you. If you have any more comments, questions, or suggestions, leave it down in the comments section below, and I will get back to you. As always, thanks for watching, and bye-bye!